Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, everybody. Hey,
Good morning.
morning. Hey, I'm kind of curious. How's my sound today? Is it any different than it's been all semester? No?
It's okay. It's the
okay.
same.
Is it? All right. You know, like I said yesterday when we were doing Audacity, that I'd learned some things from a music teacher who was using Zoom. They have very specific challenges, those people. Like they play together, you know, for example, with the students. And so I'd mimicked some of her audio settings, thinking it would help us with Audacity. And I still have to evaluate how those changes went. Anyway, we're beyond that. I want to say a few things to you today, as I generally do at the beginning, partly kind of wrapping up where we just were, introducing where we're just going, talking a little bit about the homework and the midterm that's officially due tonight, all that kind of wrap up stuff. So I think what I'd like to do right away then is jump into the screen sharing so we can get some of that type of stuff taken care of and we could move into the new deal. So the last 2 days I've been mentioning that we're going to begin with Adobe's Premiere Pro, specifically Adobe Premiere Pro 2020. I have a very long history with Adobe Premiere, so I love it. And I think some of you are going to love it too. I think most of you are going to love it too. But before we can even talk that up or get that off the ground, first I'm going to take a quick peek at my chat. Good morning again. And I'm going to go screen share right now. All right. So this is today's handout. And, you know, again, one weird thing about teaching this class is it's so odd having students that I don't meet. I never taught an online class that wasn't like last semester, you know, when we all just sort of went online, you know. You guys probably did the same in your other classes. But you know, an officially online class is a very different experience. You know, I think it was my wife. She took a class. There were like 300 students. You know, in any case, let's take a look. So, all right, I'm back at the home page. I mean, you guys that are here every day don't really need this. You're definitely used to it. And I'm coming down to today's handout at the very bottom. And I want you to please look here, as it says so amply. Class is canceled for this coming Monday. You know, I do apologize for people who are, you know, looking forward to it. On the flip side, though, it's kind of nice to have a proper 4-day weekend, which is kind of a pleasure. So, of course, we're going to have class tomorrow, the 18th, as expected. No surprise there. And next week, we're just skipping Monday. So we're resuming on Tuesday, same as always. Nothing changes, just a long weekend. See it as a holiday. I want to say a little bit about grades and the class 4 assignment. So, you know, as I mentioned to you, this semester, in terms of homework, is based on 4 homeworks. The first being the smallest, which was just, you know, a way to check out your own skill set with the HTML and CSS part of the show. And then the midterm, which was rather large. You know, tomorrow I'll know how optimistic I feel because today there's still very few midterms in there. There's more than there were yesterday, but it's due at midnight. So I have no idea what to expect. So I've got a lot of work in here, but there's over 20 people enrolled in the class. So if you've not done the midterm, I just want to say just a couple quick words about that. I'm going to, well, first off, let me back up. I guess I'm a little hyper today. Let me just see who's trying to reach me. Is this a disaster? No, not at all. That thing that sounds like a train is my phone. All right. The class 4 assignment. I am currently accepting late or redone work. So I just want to say very, very quickly, this semester doesn't precisely have late work in the sense that grades go down. I have deadlines mostly so that people don't allow information to fade, that they take their homework they do their homework when the material is hot. You know, well, we've just recently done it. I just want to say a fast few words about that theory. You know, in a class that covers this much material, I mean, we're using 6 different creative technologies over the semester. And it's not like I expect everybody to remember everything. That would be outrageous. Some of you will, you know, especially if you're still in a quarantine kind of mode, you might be making your own assignments with everything we've learned. But others will remember the thing they like best or the thing that's closest to their major. You know, it really is a little bit, you know what a smorgasbord is? You know, when all the food's laid out and you just sort of taste whatever you want. But what you go up for seconds, that's a personal affair after you've tried everything there. And that's kind of how this class runs. So I feel like people who put off assignments for a long time are at a disadvantage. Look, I know a couple of you guys were very brave and they're taking the class, but their computers were arriving late and all kinds of things. So there's no reduction of grade if you're getting me the class 4 assignment late. But don't delay it anymore. That would be silly, right? So anyway, they're all on Blackboard, and I prefer people send me email questions if they have a question about their grade. I got to tell you something, though. The grades were astronomically high. Almost everyone did a little bit more than I actually asked, which drove the grades as high as they could get. Frankly, it was mostly extremely high, like A grades, and a couple failing grades where people just completely disregarded what the assignment was or just had a bad day. So I heard from a couple of those people, and I'm accepting redone work. You know, so when you get a chance, check Blackboard. If you have any questions, your best bet is to send me an email. Please try to use the class email. I do answer BMCC email, but this is the best because I won't have to wade through everything else to find your particular request. So let me back up. If you did it, you got a high grade, forget about it. If you didn't do it, get on it right away. If you did it poorly, right, don't expect a charity grade. That I'm not going to give. So get it together, redo it. It's 15% of the final grade. Not huge, but big enough to defy getting an A in the class if it was thrown.
Professor.
Yes.
When do we get to see the grades?
Anytime today, go to Blackboard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
go to your Blackboard. Yeah, I posted them all yesterday, but, you know, I always announce them in the class when a new grade's gone up. So, you know, the midterms due at midnight. So, you know, the soonest I could grade them would be tomorrow, but it's probably not going to happen until next week. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we have it. That's the first project. The midterm grades are technically due tonight, and they will indeed be graded within the week. So I'll keep you posted about that. It's a good question. Blackboard, it's all about Blackboard. All right. So I'm skipping over a Premiere for 1 minute, coming down here. So the midterm project, again, is due tonight. You know, I really do respect the fact that most of you guys are very into deadlines. You know, and frankly, the head of the whole department was talking to me about the value of deadlines in an online class, you know, because it's a totally different world when it's an online class. And he was saying, you know, like, even if you were going to try to teach a class with no deadlines, the price would be high because a lot of people would make mistakes about their own self-timing. And then they would just deal with an avalanche of things they can't bear. So it's good that you guys are working with deadlines. All right, in short, extensions may be granted on request. Let me put it another way. Extensions are likely to be granted on request. But if someone doesn't make a request, I'm going to assume you dropped the class. You know, you just ignored a midterm project, 35% of the grade. So please, I got 3 or 4 requests just yesterday. Those people were really upstanding about it. They all had good reasons too. All right, the old details are here in class 11. I just want to say one thing to everybody in earshot. Do not improvise in my class. Do not send me Microsoft Word files for an HTML class. You know, don't create your own folder structures. You know, just follow instructions. They're all on class 11. All right. And of course, the videos are all on the playlist, including yesterday's. So I want to just back up for a second and just say a little bit about Adobe Premiere Pro. Yesterday I asked you guys, if anyone had gotten it a little early, and a few people had, and they'd said it was real easy to get. One thing that's cool about the Adobe products that most people use in design fields is once you've got the Creative Cloud suite, and you've got access to like 15 programs, 20 programs, it's pretty easy to pick the ones you want because Creative Cloud Suite does act as an app. So you probably know where it is on your computer, or you could just search it, Creative Cloud. And then you'll see Adobe Premiere and you could load it from there. All right, I just want to say one quick thing, and I'll be mentioning it again toward the end of the class. So, all this was made possible because of Adobe's strange moment of generosity, of just letting us have this thing for free. For students, as I recall, it wasn't a hell of a lot anyway. I think it was like $10 a month or something like that. But you get a year contract. So when we leave, some of you guys are going to want Creative Cloud to keep it. And it's a year contract. It's $10 a month, roughly. You'll have to check that out on your own. And you could continue with all the things we've begun. Really, I don't know how I was going to teach this class if that hadn't happened. The school's very shy about requiring people to get one-year subscriptions, as I understand that concern. It doesn't concern you. I just want to mention that we're heading to that date. It's only like 2 weeks away and change where this is going to expire. So we can talk more about it later if it helps anybody. Let me just get down to the quick. So as the way this class runs, I assume that everybody fends for themselves, gets the software. I try to be supportive, but once we're here, it's about working with the tools. You do need today's assets, though. So give me 1 second here. I just want to clean up after myself. I just got to double check one quick thing. All right, let me put this away. All right, I'm going to get today's assets from here. Some people get it from the home page. I'm going to click this. I do want to mention that it's 23 megabytes and change in the assets today because videos are large. So if you have a small, slow internet connection, it's going to take a little bit longer. One thing I do is I reset my internet connection before class almost every day to help. Once you've got that, you could get your assets ready, same way we've done in all the other classes. So I just clicked on the name in Chrome, and it took me to my downloads folder automatically, and it unzipped the zip. And the name of today's folder is called Athletes Vid Assets. Athletes Vid Assets. I'm going to drag it to my desktop because I hate working in downloads. And I'm going to go to the desktop and find it. My desktop's got a little messy, but I found it, Athletes Vid Assets, and I'm going to open that from there. I'm going to ask you to wait for me for a couple minutes. We're going to talk about these, and I want to tell you what our agenda is. So, video editing is a major, major art form, and it's really a hell of a lot of fun and very practical for certain of our majors. And for others, it's just a pleasure, and it's a great way to understand a large chunk of our culture because we're constantly being affected by how video editors think. Now, one thing I want to say is, so I have one friend who is a professor, a video professor, but he's also the most successful director that I know well, and, mostly TV commercials, I'll admit. He wants to do feature lengths, but his most success is for commercials. So he flies around the world. He does commercials in other countries even. And one day he was saying to me, Ira, because I was teaching advanced video editing with him in another school. And he said, it's interesting about all that advanced stuff. You could probably teach in a few hours everything someone needs to actually cut together a movie technically, but not artistically. And that comment stuck in my head. It was a few years ago he said that. And that really interests me. That basically means I can show you the primary steps to put a movie together between the next today and the next day or two. But artistically, that takes a long time, you know, to figure out what makes the good choices. I want to add a little bit to this. Video editing is often called post-production. It's part of what's called post-production, which basically means there's got to be pre-production, production in the middle, and post. People just call it post sometimes, post-production. So let's take a leap for a minute and talk for a moment about feature-length movies. I'm betting everybody in here likes to watch a really good movie. You know, I'm worried about anyone who doesn't, right? So, you know, the thing about those is somebody had that idea, woke up in the middle of the night, said, oh, I want to do a movie about this thing. And pre-production has begun right then and there with the idea. Maybe they write a short story, which is the way I like to do it. Right? It turned into a very, very short story. But depending on how it goes, there may be an immense team involved to get this movie off the ground. We've all seen movies where the credits go on forever. You know, I happen to like a very wide range of movies, so I want to be very blunt. On the one hand, I like extreme art house movies that many people find immensely boring. On the other hand, I like some seriously mainstream movies. I'm a big fan of Marvel movies. I'll watch mostly anything that's X-Men. In those movies, damn, there's like 1,000 people working on one movie. So one thing that I've often taught is guerrilla warfare, how to make a movie alone. Now that kind of thing, I'm only going to teach to video majors. And when I don't do that at this particular school, so I apologize to anyone who might like that, because I need to know what they took before me. They need to have taken a class to get around the professional cameras. They need to have taken a class, ideally, to learn about lighting, an entire lighting class. With real luck, they've taken a script writing class, or even possibly a storyboarding class. The more of those things they've taken, the more likely it is that they can achieve a movie. I have to say, though, I could think of a couple directors who never took any of those classes. So how in the world did they do that? You know, how did they do it? Well, one, they read a lot. You know, mostly all of this has been turned into books. You know, I made one largish movie and worked on a lot of small movies, but from my own work, really, one largish movie. And it took about a minimum of 6 to 8 books to read before I made it. Whole books. You know, it was a different way of learning. Again, it's a personal affair. So let's talk about today. I'd like you to imagine something before we get to the small movie, because I'm planning on 3 days of this. A small movie, a larger movie, and then a larger movie. Today's the smallest. But let's back up for a second. You know, you hear about directors, we all have a rough idea what they do. We all know what actors do, but what does the producer actually do, right? So we just want to say a quick couple words about producers. I would love to give this stage to one of my full-time film friends to give you their opinion about producers. There's even different kinds of producer with different names. So I'm going to say some general things. Sometimes the producers got money, they've got friends, and they've got great ideas. So imagine this for a minute. I want to do a science fiction movie, and it's an invasion, but there's no spaceships because the invasion comes as a virus. And it turns out that the virus is conscious. I probably shouldn't be using this example right now. COVID's not a space alien, I don't think so. But in this story, something like it is, and the virus communicates to itself. So I have this idea, but I'm a producer. I'm not a writer. So the first thing I might do is look for writers. So, you know, writers don't always write their own stories, surely not with scripts. You know, really, especially like often you see movies made from books. And I always ask, oh, wow, did the author write the script? If any of you have seen Handmaid's Tale, the series, the author is a master. She's just a master writer. In the future, she will be one of the most famous science fiction writers, I do hope, because she's up there with the best. She did actually write the scripts for the TV show. That's cool. That's one reason why it was so good. But often they don't. So this producer anyway has this idea. He finds a writer, goes well, right? And is ready to move ahead. He's going to find a storyboard artist. He's going to find a casting director, because that's a huge thing. You know, if there's 25 parts in this movie and 5 main parts, the producer's got no time to look at hundreds of possible actors. So the casting director does that. Maybe they boil it down to a handful and then bring the director in to meet those candidates, those final candidates. So by now we got a producer with an idea. We got a script writer who was a hired hand. We got a storyboard artist, you know, who might have come out of comics or something like that. It's also an art form. Got the casting director. The production designers are people I really admire. The people who make the actual sets. You know, they're not usually out there finding on-spot locations. They're building at least half of them, depending on the movie, maybe all of them. And on and on and on and on. So finally, that's all pre-production. All of that. That could go on for months. Finally, they're on the actual set and they're starting to shoot. The director's there. I want to say something about the director. You know, when we talk about directors, we like talking about like Spike Lee. I haven't seen his new movie, but he's a master director from New York. Big fan of his. Jim Jarmusch, another New Yorker. His movies are not quite as famous, but he's amazing. And then, but most of us could name a few. Steven Spielberg, David Lynch. I'm thinking of great Americans right now. Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese. Right? So, you know, those directors, a lot of those guys do write their own scripts. So that's one reason they got that famous. Some of them even produce their own movies. Auteur, we like to call them. Auteur. They're like, you know, your singular voice. But a lot of movies, the director's another hired gun. Guy's really good at directing on the set, knows what to tell the camera people what to do, and everybody else, surely the actors, you know, really knows how to pull it together. He might not have even been on the ground floor with the producer. That's weird, right? But in any case, once all that footage is prepared, we're getting ready now for editing, which is where we're going to step in. I don't know if any of you seen this pretty old movie called Apocalypse Now. You know, I think Apocalypse Now is the most famous war movie. That would be my bet. And Francis Ford Coppola is a very famous American filmmaker. He made it. And it took 2 or 3 years to make. I actually know an actor who worked for him on another movie, Full Metal Jacket. And he paid the actors to live in London for like 2 years, even if they had one line, because he never knew when he needed them. Cool is that? But also, he had to put up his home for a second mortgage to get the money, even after he was famous, because everyone knows how long he takes and how expensive his productions are. But in any case, oh yeah, why do I bring that up? So the movie, let's say the movie's 3 hours long. I think it was longer, it was a long movie. Let's say 3 hours. Do you think they shot 3 hours of footage, you know, with the camera? No, they shot at least, he shot like 300 hours. It was about 100 hours of footage for every 1 hour they finally selected. Can you imagine shooting 100 hours of footage just for 1 hour that actually makes it in to the movie, into the final cut? So really, in a sense, when you're looking at low budget movies, I want to switch the subject for a minute. I'm a huge fan of the lowest budget movies. You know, if a movie was good and it was made in a week, I have to see it. You know, how they do that. You know, so they're not doing 100 to 1. They're not shooting 100 hours to 1 hour that's actually in the movie. They may be shooting 10 to 1. So I made a movie, it was 30 minutes long. And it took, let me just think for a minute. Yeah, I had 100 hours of footage. For a movie that wound, I thought it was going to be a much longer movie, but it kept getting cut and cut and cut and cut and cut. I can't really see someone making a 1 hour movie with anything less than 5 to 10 hours of footage to pick from. So let's back up. What am I saying? Well, I'm saying each scene of a movie is going to have multiple takes. I mean, you've all seen this in the movie, take one, you know, and the director's like, all right, guys, you know, they're acting their cut. Hey, you over there, listen, I need those tears to be much bigger, you know. You got to look like your world is over. Okay. Can you imagine the worst thing in your life? All right. So we're going to do another take. Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. Take two. Right. And later on, but the thing is, they're not just looking for the best performance. They're looking for the best shot. If they're shooting outside, the light keeps changing, for example. And that's just talking about a scene. But imagine you were shooting a breakfast scene, right? This person is sitting down for an innocent breakfast. It seems like an ordinary day until they get a phone call and all hell breaks loose. Their life's going to change because of what happens on the phone call. So how long do you want to spend with them at breakfast? And what are you trying to say? If you don't want to show them making omelets from scratch, but you could show little bits, cracking the egg, already stirring in the pan, already serving it to the plate, and you just did a 15-second sequence of what would have taken, 15 minutes if you were hanging out with someone making breakfast. You with me so far? How would you choose the 15 seconds, though, that really tell the story of the guy making an ordinary guy's breakfast? You really have to think it through. It's all about where you cut. In the old days, cuts work like this. If someone was smoking a cigarette, I don't smoke cigarettes, but they might pick up the cigarette box. They might do one of those cool little, tap out the cigarette, pull the cigarette out. And even if it was going to change cameras, right? So now it's close up to the cigarette because you want the light, you want the flame. It's close up. You might get the actor in a shot about as big as me. Let's say this is my shot right now. Exactly the way you see me in Zoom. Cigarette comes to my mouth. Lighter, match comes to my mouth. Then you cut to a close up. That might be a side view, more like that, with the match, right? In the old days, you couldn't skip anything. You couldn't go from the tapping of the cigarette right to the match. You won't really see that in very old movies. Sometime in the, I'm guessing 60s, 70s, 80s, let's say 70s, what's called the jump cut became popular. The whole idea, and actually one guy did this early 20th century. He was kind of a genius. He showed the fire engine and then showed the house on the other side of town. Went back, showed the fire engine, went back and showing people freaking out, trying to get out the door in the house. And at first people were like, what? I'm in two places. And my mind doesn't do that. My eyes just go from place to place. But that filmmaker was like, well, you blink, right? And you expect the world to continue. What if you blink and turn around and open your eyes? You're not really confused by that. And he used that idea to create the jump cut. Your generation's so used to it, you don't even notice it. A guy slams the door and the next thing you know, he's opening a door somewhere else completely in a totally different location. He walked out of the bedroom and he walked into the office. It's not logical sense, but it is in a way because the mind jumps. It's like if I said to you right now, when's the last time, you pet a dog? If that's happened in the recent past, you just jump cut to it, boom, in your mind. And that's what we do when we edit. All right. So we're focusing on editing, right? This is not a cinematography class, how to shoot, how to act, how to write. This is after the stuff's been delivered. Now this is going to be about sports. So I'm going to show you guys something and I'm going to ask you to just join me do this together. I got the folder out and I'm going to just click the swimmer. As I've mentioned on Macs, I just hit a space bar, but we could just look together. First thing I do if I'm going to cut a movie is I want to see what the footage looks like. And if the movie's incredibly small, I've got it easy. Let me just close up this thing, make some room. All right, I'm going to play that again. This swimmer seems to be comping from the top of the frame, even though you could tell he's swimming forward, right? And we're going over him. And that's because this is shot with a drone. Do you see it? So at the very end, you'll see the shadow of the drone. Watch this. It's going to be around here. There goes the drone. So they put the camera, it's a camera drone, which makes for a very expensive looking shot. And the drone's going faster than he is. So at some point it passes him. Kind of pretty interesting. All right. The next shot I want to look back at is the kickboxer. So this woman, she starts by winding up and kicking it hard. She kicks it again, side view. I think a punch is coming up. right, with her left arm. Now she's got her back to the camera, which I'm not really very fond of. I like all the action in this shot, bam, and that you could see her because we really relate to the performer as humans. We really like to see a face. You don't see a lot of shots in movies of someone from their back. So I'm gonna probably cut that out. As an editor, I'm gonna make an editorial decision of what I'm gonna keep. Kick, kick, I want both of those. I definitely want the punch, bang, and then we're gonna cut somewhere around here. I wanna show you the bike. So his head is not in the shot. I'm not really very fond of that. The whole bike goes out of the shot, but then his head's in the shot, right? We can relate to him now. He's zipping, zipping, zipping. You know, one thing about this particular clip, though, is much longer than the other ones. The other ones were a few seconds. This guy's still going. There's a lens flare. Do you see that sunlight coming into the lens? We like that. People used to say you can't do it, but now we like it. He makes this weird kiss like he's the Queen of England. Ah, to my adoring fans, yay, right? And, you know, really, this shot's 29 seconds long, where the swimmer was only 11 seconds. So he's about 3 times as long. He's definitely going to need to be cut in some way. The issue with the bicyclist is I like the beginning and the end the most. Don't like the beginning. So if we crossfade, take the middle out and then have him fade into the end of his ride, it's going to feel like he might have been riding for days. There's so many editor's tricks that change the effect of a story and even what the story is. Let's get our hands on it. So have the folder where you could find it, right? I'm going to put my browser away and clean up after myself. All right. And want that folder. We're going to need it a lot. And folks, listen, folder structure is as urgent in video as it is in web design. You know, Photoshop didn't really care a hell of a lot about where you kept your parts. You know, we tried to be neat, but HTML just breaks, you know, if things are not in the same folder. Video's the same. So we're really going to be devoted to this folder today. All right, I'm going to ask you to open up Premiere. Let me just take a quick peek at my chat. Nope. Oh, let me just take a quick look. Omar.
It's Premiere Pro, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's Adobe Premiere Pro 2020, which is what I'll be using, which is almost exactly the same as last year's version of Adobe Premiere Pro. I haven't seen the difference yet. Omar, I know you're asking me about the homework. Please check your email, all right? I had some stuff to tell you. So please check your email, okay? I did get the homework, but there's stuff that you need to address. So just write me about my email. Okay. Just check the chat there. All right. I'm opening Premiere. I like to create little shortcuts to it down on my dock. And this is going to open up. I want you to give me just a second here. There's something I wanted to pull out that I neglected. Just take me a moment. Sorry, I don't really need it. Okay, so it goes. All right, I'm going to hide everybody. I want to say a little bit about this page. This is called a splash page, and a lot of people just turn it off. You know, I myself used to never use it. Now, on occasional, I'll use it. When you're starting a new project, though, the new project and even opening an old project can be done from the file menu. So since all programs do that, I lean on the file menu. Let's try it that way. Can everyone do file menu new? You'll notice there's there's a bunch of choices. File menu new. You want new project. Now, this window cannot be ignored, and I do want to say a quick word to you, though. You know, Audacity called its stuff projects too. It was an Audacity project. So this is going to be a Premiere project. And that basically means it's an authoring file or the artist's file that only the artist opens. You know, it's not something that's typically shared. When you're done, of course, you're going to make the cooked version, the export file, right? But this is going to be the artist's file. In this particular program, in most video programs that I've used, this is an important step. So where it says name, could you highlight that name? Let's give it a name right now. I'd like you to call it Athletes Today. You don't have to worry about capitals or not, or spaces or not, just Athletes Today. The next thing, and I really got to be clear with you, this next step is urgent. Do not skip it. You see, I've taught a lot of video, to be honest with you, and I know what the typical mistakes are. And one of the most typical mistakes is not setting a root folder. And then what happens is your project goes crazy, turns red, tells you got offline clips, it can't find the parts. Then the filmmaker utterly loses it. It's a disaster area. The first step to make sure you don't lose anything is what's coming up. So you gave it a name, but the location here is random. If you use Premiere a lot, it's going to look at your last folder, and that's bad. If you're using it for the first time, it might even go right into your applications folder. So let's click Browse instead. So for location, we're not going to hand type a path. You're just going to click Browse. And then find your way to wherever you put today's folder. I put mine on the desktop. It is called Athletes Vid Assets. So find it and open it. And then simply click this blue button that says Choose. And you're going to see a path through your computer to the desktop or your Documents folder, wherever you've been putting stuff, right into today's folder. That's all we have to do here. And the only reason I'm lingering on it is because they're both important. This is the name of the project, and this is where it lives. You can click OK now. Now, I need to say something about Premiere and how it looks. And one thing I want to do before I talk about it is I want to make sure that we all are looking at a similar layout. So this is what I'd like you to do with me. Could you take a look with me under the Window menu? And under the Window menu, it says Workspaces. And we may have seen this before because most programs have this now. And what all that means is there's different arrangements that you might choose from for this large program. And we're doing mostly editing, so the arrangement I'd like for you to choose is editing. This is not on today's handout, because you could do it in a different layout, but I prefer this one. Window menu, Workspaces, Editing. If you ever mess it up, you'll come back here and say Reset. But if yours says Editing, you're good. If not, choose Editing now. I got to ask a question. Windows folks, did it look the same as mine?
Yeah, it did.
Great.
Yeah.
Folks, remember, I really do want to be inclusive. So if I blow something because it's completely different on your operating system, feel free to interrupt me. It's cool. All right. So here we are in the editing layout, right, of Premiere Pro, and I need to introduce to you these 4 windows. Now, frankly, there are little bars between them that can be moved, and later on you might choose to do that. Right now, I'm going to leave it the way that it just showed up. I want to draw your attention to these windows. This one in the lower left says Project on it with the name of the project that you just gave it, called Project Athletes Today. We call this the project window. I do want to point out, though, that there's other windows that show up down here in this lower quarter, and we're going to be using another one. But right now, you're in the project window. I'm going to show you what this does, but let me tell you in brief. This is where we bring in all the parts. So today we only have 4 parts. Tomorrow we're going to have more. If you're working on a feature-length movie, you're going to have a lot of parts, and they're all going to go in here. This here is called the source window, and I can see now that I've clicked on the wrong one, Effect Control. I want to click on the one called Source. Now, what is that? Well, you're going to get your parts from your project window, and you're going to audition them to check them out in the source window. And even beyond auditioning, you're going to choose where you want to cut them because you're not going to want to use the whole clips. You remember I said I didn't like the boxer turning her back to us? So I'm going to make that decision here of cutting that off. Down here, we've got the timeline. Now, the timeline is going to look very similar to the timeline in Audacity, except for it's going to be mostly about your video, your picture edit, and there's also going to be tracks in there for sound. So this is going to be a timeline. Really, a lot of the semester is going to be on timelines, Audacity and now Premiere. We're going to see another one when we do animation. This one that says program, this is like the TV set, actually. Mostly, you just watch what it is you're making. So these 3 windows do the work. this window mostly is going to watch it. Could you click on the project window? That's the one in the lower left. Let's go get our parts. One way to do that is to do File menu, Import. Now, it should take you to today's folder. If it doesn't, I'm a little concerned, but find your way to today's folder if necessary. Athletes, vid, assets. Now, you'll notice one thing got added. We don't want to add that. That is the project, Premiere Project, right? So this is the extension that will only open in Premiere. We're already in it, so please ignore that one. I want you to take these others. So I'm going to do them at once. On a Mac, I could hold down Command, pick the ones I want. I'm hoping Windows people know how to do it on Windows. Anyone could shout it out. Hey, why don't you just tell me, how would you select things out of order on Windows?
Control and click.
Just control click. That was my guess, but I was shy about guessing since it's Command on a Mac. All right, so these are the ones I want you to choose, not the project because you're in it. And then click Import. Guys, I smell a fire. Can you give me 1 minute while I just check that everything's okay? I just want to see what's up with that. Smells too good to be a fire. It's just making me hungry. That's all that is doing. All right. Okay, so let's take a look down there. So there are your objects. I'd like you to click on the swimmer, please. All right, and I want to tell you what comes next. I would like to see the previews there, which is the way it used to work. I'm going to just leave it like that for the moment, though. I'd like for you to notice that next to swim.mp4 is this little icon. Mine's purple. Could you double click the icon? All right, guys, we're moving forward right now, so I want to be clear about how this is going to work. You bring your parts in. That's just getting started. But then when you're ready to start working with one of your clips, that's what it's called, right? We are going to open it in the source window. And all you could drag and drop it in there, but I'm in the habit of just double clicking the icon. Did that work for everybody?
Yeah.
All right, guys, listen. I'm going to share some very professional tricks with you, right? And it's not like I want to like push people overboard. I think you'll be happier with these tricks, honestly. So we're not going to be using rewind, stop, and play. We're going to be using J, K, and L. Could you look at your keyboard? And I want you to find those three letters. Notice that they're in a row. J, K, and L are often handled with one hand, right? And this is what I'd like you to do. If necessary, click in the source window. You'll notice a blue box shows up. Whatever window you click in will do that. I want you to be in the source window. And then I'd like you to bring your fingers over to JKL and just tap L. At some point, can you tap K? All right, so we know that L is play and K is stop. Could you tap J? So J is rewind. And K is still stop. I'm imagining that's working for everybody. All right. So JKL. Now, that's not all they do though. This time, right, I want you to notice that blue little playhead that's in there, right? If necessary, use J to get it back to the beginning and stop it. Oops, sorry. I want you to see how to fast forward. So when you hit L, it plays at normal speed, but if you hit it again, it's faster, and again, it's even faster, and again, it's even faster. The more times you tap L, the faster it goes. Oh man, this thing's less than 12 seconds, so we don't want to get carried away with it. But imagine if it was a 10-minute clip. Legend has it that Alfred Hitchcock shot in 10-minute shots because that was the longest film he could get, and he just wanted to just be very live feeling. 10-minute shots, legend says. Same thing goes for rewind though. So if your playhead's way over on the right, see how rewind would behave. J, rewind real time, tap it faster. So you could zip through the timeline. Is that behaving for everybody? So you want that finger ready over K, right? So you could stop whenever you want. There's one more set of tricks I want to share that's still JKL. If you hold down the stop button, it'll let you move either direction in slow motion. Now we're going to need that a lot. So I'm going to go forward, but I'm going to hold down K while I do it. So I'm holding down K and I'm tapping L. With one tap, I'm moving ahead one frame. But if I hold L down, so I got K and L, I'm going very, very slowly. So in short, if you hold down stop, the K key, and tap L, you move in one frame. You're not going to do that too often. But often you'll hold down K and then add L, hold them both down to go slow. I want to give you a reason to do this. So bear with me. Everyone in this room likes completely different kinds of movies, right? If we had the time, it would be fun for everyone to recommend a movie or two, right? Americans are famous for their love of action movies, you know. So and I'm not going to put that down. I'm not going to put that up. I already confessed that I like a certain kind of action movie. To be blunt, I only like it if they're smart and if there's some kind of good script and if there's some magic to it. I personally cannot stand car chases or that kind of thing. But the American audience needs a lot of action. So I want to mention something about that. You might hear someone say, cut close to the action. So that basically means don't have the cigarette smoker sitting around with their cigarette and then just go right to, or start with it in their mouth. Cut close to it. If there's a gun shootout, you know, you don't need the whole lifting of the gun. It might just be the reach for the holster, and the next thing they're already shooting, or someone already hit the ground, cutting very close to the action. So I'd like you to rewind the swimmer though, because I want to say a couple things about what I'd like to do with the swimmer. At the beginning, he's not in the shot. I want you to get to the location where he first comes in the shot. That's near the ceiling. So I'm going to hold down K and use L, since I know it's close, to go in slow motion and get to that spot where his head is in the shot. So there he is in the shot. How do we say start there? So the first step is you figure out where you want a given shot to begin. And then I want you to notice something about JKL. Could you look at your keyboard? Do you see how I and O are above them? So the trick is rarely 5 keys, it's not 3. The 3 get around, but I means set my in point. Start here. Could you tap the letter I? Make sure you find this moment. Swimmer's up by the ceiling. Tap I. Now, if you look here in your source window, it starts this grayish kind of thing going, and it's telling you this stuff before you just cut off. I want you to hear me out. If you were doing this even 10 years ago, you probably would be doing this with scissors. You'd literally have the film, you'd put it on this little machine that had a light underneath it, maybe a magnifier above it. You'd literally hand roll the film, say, this is where I want it to start. You'd whip out the scissors and cut it, which is why it's called a cut. And why they're called clips. You take the finished one and you'd hang it from a clothesline and you sort of line them up, because later on you're going to tape them together. Not Scotch tape, but tape. Now just about everybody's doing it digitally. You know, and I think when you look at films, there's still argument. Film's very expensive and slow, but it does have a cool look. As time goes forward, just about everybody's moving into digital. We're shot digitally, edited digitally. You know, honestly, even the ones now who shoot on film edit digitally. They have the film digitized, and then they jump into a program like this one. So anyway, I hope you have an in point. I want to make the out point. So let's play forward from there. We're still in the source window. The swimmer's coming down to the bottom, and I'm going to stop here because his feet just touch the floor. I don't mind that. But if I go forward, the question is, do I want to end with him off the shot completely? Or would I like to back up a little bit? He's still in the shot. I'm going to stop here. Now I can see you going either way. I want to cut close to the action. So I got just swimmer. I don't got extra empty pool. If you prefer him off the shot, just get him just off. It's up to you. So you're using JKL. But when you're ready to make the decision, tap O. Oh, Marissa, what a cool cat you got there. Hey, is that a Russian blue? You don't know.
I have no idea.
Because it looks like my cat, which we got from a, one of those places that saves strays.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
no.
sorry. If it's distracting, I'll turn off my
No.
video.
No. I like to humanize the class every now and then, but just saying something about the world. Otherwise, it's like holding your breath. No, not at all.
Okay.
But you know what? Drawing my attention to the cat was your obvious joy in everything that you learn. You kind of send out that vibe. And I know a lot of you guys also share that quality of just joy in learning. Okay. So you notice how small the area is you actually chose, right? Now, guys, I want to say something to you. This takes a little bit of faith. We're about to add this to the movie. But hear me out. Have you ever seen scenes where a clip is playing and then it fades out into a whole different clip, even a whole different scene? Like maybe someone says, yeah, I'm going to go for a drive. And it fades out and they're already in their car driving down the road, right? That's called a cross dissolve. So I'm not talking about fading to black. I'm talking about one image literally fading whoosh into another image. Now, if you want to do that, which we're going to do, you could only do it if the first clip has extra footage after your out point. So if this was too close to the right wall, I'd never be able to use that kind of transition, that kind of dissolve. So the way we're going to do it today, every clip, hear me out on this, every clip is going to have a little extra footage that you didn't choose, spare footage. Premiere uses the spare footage to create blends. So we're going to make sure we always have spare footage at the beginning and spare footage at the end. Now listen, folks, please be honest with me. Does anyone need to meet? I could review all of that in 1 minute. Would anyone like me to review it? People are shy. I'm going to review this incredibly quickly. So I just want to show you what I'm going to do, right? I want to, give me a minute here. So I chose a clip. I went down in the project file and I double clicked its icon. I don't double click the name because it might think I'm changing the name. So I double click the icon. So whichever one I picked shows up there. I wanted the swimmer. I use J to get back to the beginning, right? And then I find the spot I want to begin at. So I could have gone in slow motion, however I find it. I'm very picky, so I do a lot of slow motion. When I'm ready to choose that moment, I tap I. Now, by the way, the same shortcuts work in Final Cut and probably in Avid and probably in every serious video editing program. So then I moved forward and I made a decision about where I wanted him to end, which was here, in my case, maybe a little bit further. And I'm going to tap O. All right, this is where we should all be. It's time to use the timeline. Now, usually you just press on the clip right in the source window. It turns into a fist. You drag it and you drop it right in here. And you see the movie. Now, what's interesting about this moment is at this stage, you have begun the movie for real. This area up top is called the program. And as I mentioned, it's really just a TV set. It's kind of showing you the movie that you're working on, while you work on it. So we've got our first clip and I want to go with the second. So one quick moment, project window, you brought all your parts in. You can do this again tomorrow. Source window, you audition the clip, because I might have had 3 versions of that swimmer, right? So the first step would be pick which one to start with. And you choose your ins and outs. At that stage, you press and you drag it over right into here. All right. Let's go back to the project window then. And I want you to open up Kickbox. So we're finding the icon and we're double clicking it. And if the playhead's in the middle, which sometimes happens, use your J key or just drag the little blue thing back to the left. So let's play this. She kicks. Now, the one thing about this is all of that was interesting, right? It's going to be hard to cut off of the beginning, right? But I'm going to bring it back to the beginning because I want to make an argument. If you want severe action, right, and someone's getting punched, boy, I apologize for all, your teacher's a pacifist. Well, not a, I used to be a hardcore pacifist, and now I'm a modified pacifist because life is tough. But basically, I'm using this because there's a lot of violence in media, right? So I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying. If you're doing that kind of action, right, a punch that comes from here could be interesting. But if there's repeated punches, right, and I'm just showing them up close, bam, 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 whoa, that's going to be severe action. Where'd he go? Help! Live editing. Yeah, I know. I'm kind of silly. All right, in any case, I want to cut it with her foot in the air. You know what I mean? So I'm going to move forward a little bit. I'm thinking about that, right? Because it's just got that second snap coming from the knee, right? And I'm going to set my in point there. Now, we don't have to do it in the exact same place, right? I'm making suggestions. And I got to tell you, though, the people going to be best at this might not be the ones who are technically best. You know, my friend, the very successful filmmaker, you know, told me I know a lot more about editing than him. And I was shocked by that. I was like, man, I'm multimedia. He said, look, I think of myself more of a director. And, you know, he really, frankly, I happen to live in one of the most shot neighborhoods in Brooklyn. And not because it's fancy, because the government thinks that we don't mind being crowded. I don't know what the deal is. So that almost every subway station shot you see in New York is shot at my station. So they're always changing the names of the station. But what are all those trucks that show up in my neighborhood? They're like 10 trucks show up for like a 20-minute shoot. You know, and the big time directors, they know what's in there. It's like hundreds of the exact same light in case they break, you know, 100 of this, 100 of that. Anyway, right now we're back to editing. So I chose to cut her to start there. That's where I set my in point. Make sure that you see this. If you want to change it, you can. You could change it anytime you want. You move the playhead, you tap I. So if you don't like what you got, find something you like. I just don't want this. So I'm moving a little forward to about there. And I said I. All right, let's play it. She kicks. This is good stuff. She kicks again, still good. Punch. Nice. This is a little bit unnecessary. You know what I mean? Like I don't have a face to identify with. Folks, if you're an art house type of person, you may be offended by the things that I'm saying because I'm including mainstream thinking. I have to admit, some of my favorite stuff in movies would break all of these rules. There was a show I'm trying to think of. Any of you guys ever see the show Sopranos?
Yeah.
I forgot. One of those guys played the same character on another TV show of his own. But that other show was made in Northern Europe, and it was 100 times slower. It was such a great show, and I can't think of the name right now. But it was in this neighborhood that's really slow. So they would have him walking to someone's door in the snow, and it would be like this. He would literally take the entire walk. And the reason they did that is they wanted to show this like mafia guy who's like, you know, New York style, having to deal with a different culture when he was relocated for the witness protection program. And so they would take their time. We're doing the opposite. We're going with American attention span, which is famously short. All right. So basically what I'm saying is, let's cut it off once you feel like there's too much after the action's already been done. I'm going to hit O right here. So it looks like I got about 8 seconds left. All right. If you like your in point and you like your out point, you left a whole tail over here of extra footage, I'd like you to press and drag it. And I want you to drop it on the same track, not up here, not down here, here, back to back with the first one. Now I gotta warn you, don't overlap them. That's called an overwrite. And if you do that, you're gonna delete some of your swimmer. So it'll act like a magnet and it'll help you find the exact right edge and just drop it there. If at any point one of my steps does not work for you, please find a way to let me know, right? Even in the classroom, the different computers acted differently. So I usually have a plan B ready. So I'd like to just talk up the program window for a minute. If you rewind this window, remember this is called the timeline, and you could use J here too. Well, let me point something out. This is the way the timeline looks in terms of timeline. This is how it looks in terms of TV. Whichever one you click in will allow the same shortcuts. So you can use JKL. So right now, this is what I got. I got the swimmer, followed by the boxer. Now, I want to make some changes, and I'd like you to hear me out. We got an hour, and I'm going to keep it simple. There's part of me that doesn't really want to keep it simple. So these are the two plans that I would sometimes use. One would be, I might have her fade out and transition, the swimmer, dissolve into the boxer. And I think that's what we're going to try. On the other hand, though, maybe tomorrow or while we're still on the subject, I might want to cross-cut both back and forth. A little swimmer, a little boxer, a little swimmer, a little boxer, back and forth. You know, we get some excitement out of it. That's considerably more work. So I think I want to start with something more direct. I'm not feeling this moment here. Let me just move this over. When the swimmer reaches the bottom and there's this cut, that's a weird cut. There's nothing natural about it. You know, frankly, I don't have to dissolve it, but if I was making this movie, I would have planned in advance how to cut from one to the other. You know, I might have gotten away with it if her outfit was the same blue as the pool. The mind might have accepted that bridge just based on color. If something was coming out of the bottom of the shot for the boxer, I might have gotten away with it. But right now, I don't have any way to explain this weird cut. Let's try a dissolve. All right, folks, this is different. I'd like you to come over to the project window. Now, I mentioned to you that some of these windows actually serve multiple purposes. The project window does that, and the source window also does that. But I'd like you to look at the project window. Now, I'm looking for some tab in the project window that says effects. Now, the way my laptop is set up, I don't have enough room. I can't see that tab. So there's this double arrow here. And if you want to show off, you call that a chevron. That just means double arrow. I'm going to click the chevron. Now, if you see effects up here, your computer's bigger than mine, your monitor's bigger than mine, just click effects. If you're on a laptop, it's probably like mine. Click the chevron, the double arrow, and choose effects. I'm looking at my chat. I'm looking at what whoever has got their camera turned on. Did you find the effects tab?
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to move back and forth between the effects tab and the project tab, where it still has the other parts in it. So we're only temporarily coming to effects. Now, people get excited when they hear effects, and I understand that. So if you look at these, you can tell there's lots of effects, but the kind we need just now are video transitions. So I'd like you to click the little arrow for video transitions. There's 3D transitions, which I never use. I'm a little prejudiced against stuff that strikes me as corny. And page peels, yeah, like a page peeling. Again, rather corny. I might use it in a comedy about readers. But right now, what we want is a dissolve. Could you open the subfolder called dissolve? Now, there's a bunch of interesting dissolves here. We'll be using 2 of them today, but I want to use cross dissolve. And you notice cross dissolve's got a little extra frame around it, only because it's the one that's used the most, right? I want to show you how to use it, so please watch closely. I'm pressing on cross dissolve, and I'm dragging way over here. And I'm going to drop it exactly on the gap between the clips, not to the left, not to the right, exactly over the gap, and I let go. I'm going to do it again in a minute. And again, as always, you need to let me know if you feel like you need a hand, right? So your dissolve is on right now. Now, you might like it, you might not. I want to show you how to alter it to be perfect, but let's get a peek at it first. Let me take mine out for a minute just so I could help anyone who might have missed it. The first thing I had to do was I had to leave the project window and find effects. I looked along here, I didn't see it. So I clicked the double arrow and I went to effects. Again, on a big screen, you'd see it. Once you're in effects, you want to go right to transitions, video transitions, and go to dissolve. This is the one I'd like you to know the best, cross dissolve. Once you finally find it, it's got a little search window. I never use this, but I could probably type cross dissolve in there. I don't know. Once you find it, press and drag, drop it directly over the gap. Okay, what I'd like for you to do is in your timeline, just drag the playhead a little bit before your transition and play it. I'm going to use my L key to play. Now, that was pretty sweet. I'm good. Here it goes the other way. And I want to say a little bit about how to use cross dissolves. That was a random length. Now, we can make it a slower dissolve, which gives it a kind of dreamy quality. We can make it a shorter dissolve, so people are not, hey, look at that cool effect. They're just feeling a basic change. Shorter, longer, it's kind of up to us. But it's limited by one thing. If the first clip, that's the swimmer, had no extra footage at the end, in other words, your out point went all the way to the right, you couldn't do a dissolve, or you'd be very limited. If you have a lot of extra footage, you can make a long dissolve. Yes.
Professor,
Yes.
hi, I'm like,
Hi,
if
buddy.
we have, I have one question.
Yes.
For example, if we have a video or any video which is like 400 and something pixel and another video is 1000 something pixel, and then we are arranging them with together. So can we make them with just one resolution, like on 1000 or 720?
That's a
So
really
all
good
video
question.
will be like
It's a
that.
really good question. So that's a problem, and we're actually having a little bit of that problem. The kickboxers footage is a little shorter than the swimmer, so you'll see black stripes, which we may change later. So I want to give you an honest answer about that. In the professional world, you would avoid that at all costs, right? The cinematographer would typically be in charge of making sure that all the cameras are set the same if there are multiple cameras. You know, I will answer your question more directly, but I just want to say this first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In the professional world, you don't even want to get into that situation. The aspect ratio, the shape and size of it was decided early. The cinematographer is making sure everything shot the same. There may only be one camera because they're so expensive, right? And for other reasons. But if there's multiple cameras, they're all set the same. So all the footage would be the same. But let's say you're doing a documentary, and in your documentary, you're shooting high definition, modern footage, but there's moments of history. So you're getting family movies that were shot in old Betacam video, and you got even older stuff from the 60s. They're all going to be different sizes. Then your question really kicks in. What do we do? Well, the safest way to handle it, you're not going to like this, but the safest way to handle it is the actual Premiere project is the size of the biggest one. And all the small ones are placed in real size against black backgrounds or against something else. And you'll see this in documentaries very, very often. You know,
Yep. Yep.
You know, so the big size rules and the little ones. And why? Because you can't make the little ones bigger without losing quality. So I want to say something about that. I've been in that situation. So if I have footage that's too small, I will let myself blow it up, but no more than 10%. Like a good eye is going to see it even then, but most people won't see that I've reduced the quality. I can get away with 10%. I can't take this and go, whoa, just like Photoshop, it's just going to ruin it. That was a really good question. So I will try to show you at some point how you would scale something up or down. So just give me some time to do that. I'll show you, but I'm going to ask you to be very, very prudent. Do it as little as you can get away with. Excellent question. All right. I want to get back to the transition, and I want to show you guys a couple of new things. So I'm going to ask you to join me. Let me just get stuff out of the way that you guys can't, I don't think, even see. I'm just going to get it out of the way, though. All right. Could you bring your playhead right to the middle of your transition? I want to introduce you to a new feature. This is a weird one, right? So it's going to take just a moment of concentration. At the bottom of the timeline is a weird looking scroll bar. And in the middle of it, it does scroll like any scroll bar. This is like, the bottom of a browser if a website was too wide. But that's not the part I want to show you. It's the handle. This weird little scroll bar has a handle on the left and on the right. I want you to take the right side handle, drag to the right a little. Oh, I would be seeing more movie. Drag to the left, and I'm zooming in. Now what I want you to do is zoom in on the transition. So the argument goes like this. When you're zoomed, I could click on the gray part and move back and forth. It gets very confusing though. But if I want to change the amount of zoom, I drag that right side handle. Now let's be clear, this doesn't affect the movie in any way, right? It just makes it easier for you to work on it. So the way I suggest you do it to stay oriented and not get lost is place the playhead on the area you want to zoom in, then grab that right side handle and drag to the left to zoom in. When you get the hang of this feature, you'll probably grow addicted to it. I wish every program had this. I wish Audacity even had it. I definitely wish Adobe Animate had it, but neither of them have it. So they're a real headache doing something like this in those programs. So why did I ask you to do it with the transition? I wanted to show you something. You can make a short transition by grabbing the end of it and dragging it in. And let's see it as a bridge. This is a tiny bridge between clips. Mine's going to look like this. Whoop, too short. Here it is a little longer. Oh, just long enough to get the job done. Well, but if I'm looking for something dreamy, which I'm not really in this case, I would drag it way out. It's going to be a very slow transition. I'm hoping everybody's seeing the difference there. Now, I'm not going to be able to go infinitely outward. There's going to be a limit, and for you too. So I just hit the limit as it turns out. So I want to repeat something from before. That limit is completely determined by how much spare footage I left. So I got to tell you something. I don't consider myself a director, but I did direct one movie. And it was a lot of fun being on the set and working with people, but I'm never going to do it again, I don't think, because there were a lot. Yeah, I could see why directors' lives typically fall apart. It's just the most consuming thing I've ever been through, and I don't look forward to it. But one thing I did do was I always called cut a little late. And I even warned my camera people, because we had a lot of cameras. You know what, if I make a mistake and call cut, and you want to wait an extra second or two, you go right ahead and then stop the camera. Because I knew I was going to use that spare footage later, since I'm an editor. So I made sure that they were large. Hey, did this work for you guys?
Yeah.
So I want to add something about this that goes just a bit deeper. This is a little bit, I get a little nervous about using a cross dissolve this way, because they actually have a mental purpose. All right, I need your imagination now. I want to borrow just your mind's eye. I want you to imagine a movie, and this is what you're seeing. Coming out of one side of the frame is a little kid on a red tricycle. A little kid. And they're driving, the camera's still, the kid on the bicycle is going like this, zip, just riding along. You're seeing them from far away, red tricycle, maybe 4 years old, whatever. And then it cross dissolves. You're looking at a similar shot, but you're on a racetrack, and a red sports car, a red race car is going. What actually happened? Take a leap.
Color.
Say,
Transition through color.
well, that's a good point, actually. What I was actually trying to say is you're going to guess it's the same person grown up. Now, especially if I do a slow dissolve, almost everyone's going to interpret it the same way. That's that kid. And you know, it's amazing how much visual shorthand that we all actually speak. You know, because we watch the same movies, but we don't actually talk about it. You know, in the 1970s, if a couple was having a date and then things were getting, you know, hot and heavy and they went into the bedroom, in the 70s, they would cut to the dog lying on the rug and the dog would go, "Arr!" You know, it meant something adult was going on. Or they would cut to fireworks. Like, what? Why are we suddenly outside looking at fireworks? You know what I mean? It was a kind of like Puritan way to try to say that something adult was going on. But that's visual language. And I keep on bringing up the subject of visual language. So we broke that rule just now, right? We're not talking about time passing. So here's my argument. The number one use for cross dissolving is time passing. And I'm going to use that in a few minutes. We're using it for a different purpose. We're smoothing out an awkward cut, right? And it looks pretty good. All right. What I'd like you to do, though, is get back to your timeline, find that little handle, drag it to the right to make some room, because we're going to need this area over here. So I went beneath the timeline, I grabbed the right handle, I dragged it to the right, and it's just making more room for me. All right, we have to get back to the project window on our left, but we're in effects currently. So I'm just going to click the double arrow. Unless you see the word project up here, you know, because you're on a big screen, click the double arrow, and I'm going to ask you to choose project. And it should say project athletes today if you named it with me earlier. And you're back in the project window. Guys, I want to say one more thing just to be prudent. The worst thing happens, you're working like a dog on a movie, you're excited, you're proud of yourself, you can't wait to show everybody, and your computer crashes. And then the first question is, when was the last time I saved? Let's save now, right? So let's go to the File menu and simply choose Save. And because when you open the project, you gave it a name and a folder, it didn't open a window for you. It just saved. So you could save as often as you want now. You could even use the rather familiar Command S to save. All right. Did everyone find their project window again? We want to work a little bit with that cyclist. So back in your project window, find the one called Bike, double click the icon, that little purple thing, or here. And here we are in this 29-second clip. And I'd like you to play it with your L key. Sometimes that won't work because you may be clicked in the wrong window. If that ever happens, just click on the window that you want, L key. And I want you to wait till you see his head in the frame. If you missed it, just stop, use your K key, and back up. So you could back up with J, or you could hold down K and J to be really exact about it. And I just want that moment when he's first in the frame. I'm going to tap I. I want to point out that if the kickboxer is going to transition into the cyclist, you're going to need this little bit of empty footage. Believe it or not. It feels like we're cutting it off, but Premiere remembers it and knows how to use it. So we really don't want to get too close to the left wall if we can avoid it. All right, let's play further with the L key. And so he's cycling along. I like to mention the sunlight coming in the camera there, right? It's creating these little spots. Before the mid-60s, I would estimate, this was always an error and you would have had to cut it out. There was a famous movie called Easy Rider. I'm trying to remember who made Easy Rider. You know, it might have been Jack Nicholson. No, he was in it. But anyway, their cinematographer liked the lens flare and convinced the director of its value. And that got so popular now that people do it with filters. They do fake lens flares. It's funny how a film taste changes. His head did go out of the shot in the middle. I don't know if I mind that or not. Let's just let it be. We'll see what we want to do later. So he cycles along. I want you to wait for this weird hand thing he does. Here it comes. He's going to kiss his hand, wave in the air. 2 times it goes up. He's waving his hand in the sunlight, very exalted, like a knight on a horse. Thing is, right now, I'm almost up against the right edge, which is really too close. So I'm going to back up before the kisses, play it again, because I want to stop pretty close to the completion. The hand went up twice. I'm going to stop about here. His hand's still in the air. And I hit O. I've got very little on the right side here. And I just want to make a comment on how big of a problem is that? Well, if there's no clip after it, it's no problem at all. 2, maybe you don't like transitions. You know, my favorite movies barely use transitions. My family has gotten so used to me talking about edits while we watch. They used to always tell me to shut up because you're ruining the story, man. But now they all do it. They're like, what a great edit. You know, I really didn't expect, you know, again, like I was saying the other day, you know, maybe the ceiling fan cuts right to the twirling blade on a helicopter. And I wouldn't want to transition that. It's too cool. I wouldn't want to miss it. So anyway, if you're not into transitions or there's no following clip, don't worry about this little bit of being so small. It's fine. I want you to drag it onto the same track back to back with the kickboxer. So I'm coming back here, pressing on it, dragging, dragging, dragging. And now I'm dragging it right up to the wall. Now on your end, I'd like you to rewind the whole thing. And I'm just going to either do it with this or I'm going to use my J key a bunch of times. I'm going to play it once. You could look at mine or your own. It's up to you. So I got a couple complaints here. You know, later I want to re-answer Faik's question and make the kickboxer a little bit bigger, but I don't want to do that right now. Right now I got a couple of issues. Does this movie want to transition between the boxer and the cyclist? I think so, because it's just really awkward. I mean, she's moving to the left and he's moving to the right. It's just a real hiccup. I don't like that. So I think I'm going to put a dissolve there. Also, it's just too long. It makes the movie feel like it's about the bicyclist. It's almost twice as long as the other 2 clips. So the first thing I'd like you to do is get me a dissolve in between the kickboxer and the bike. Now, I'd like you to do it on your own before I do it. So you're going to have to find your effects. Essentia, how you doing today?
I'm good.
You good?
I'm
I was
just
wondering
following.
if that was sadness or just exhaustion or...
No, I'm following along. I'm just putting my head too.
Oh, no, I know you're diligent. I know you're following because you always do. It was just a human question. All right. Okay. All right. I'm coming back I'm going to do it. So I'm coming back to the project window. And again, as I mentioned, my screen's too small to see effects up here. So I'm clicking the double arrow, going back to effects. Got it easy this time because we left dissolve out. And of course, if anyone wanted to try other dissolves, they're all interesting. I'm going to stick with cross dissolve for the moment. So I'm going to drag it carefully and drop it again right on that gap, not to the left, not to the right, right on the gap. That's how it knows I'm trying to bridge the 2 clips. If I want to test it, I'll just back up a bit so that I could watch it in the program window. That's pretty nice, but I am going to make it longer. I might have to zoom in. If you need to zoom in also, I recommend getting the playhead just where you want it before you zoom. Then I'm coming down to that little handle I mentioned earlier. I'm going to click it and drag to the left. It really helps to place your playhead before you do that zooming trick. And I'm going to drag this out a little bit more. See what that feels like. I prefer it. I'm going to keep it that way. Dissolving's kind of easy. And now you know a lot about how to apply other transitions. The steps are going to be mostly the same, right? I want to get back to my timeline and refit everything, right? Because I'm done with that little area, but I want to do more on the cyclist. So I'm coming back to my timeline. I'm clicking that little zoom handle from the scroll bar and dragging it out to the right. Right now, I'm not going to add anything after it, so I'm just getting as wide as I can. I want to show you something. Since I feel like the bicyclist is too long, I have an idea. He comes into the shot nicely. I like that his head was just in there like I had planned. And he's riding. Now, the middle here, there's nothing new. What's worse is about here, he goes out of shot again, which is rather awkward. You can never see this in a movie. And then he moves forward, and he's back in the shot. And he's just bicycling again. That cycle, this car's following him carefully, right? I bet you that's a team thing. It probably has his supplies in there. And then we're moving further to the right. He does the kisses. So all I really care about is the beginning and the end. If I cut out about 1/3, right? The middle third, right? I could close the gap. I'm literally going to take a chunk out of the middle. I'm going to take the beginning of the bike ride, the end of the bike ride, sandwich them back together after I remove the middle and do a proper cross dissolve. Join me. I'm kind of in love with this tool, the razor tool. Now we haven't even touched the toolbar. The first weird thing is this is the only Adobe product that I use where the toolbar is kind of in the middle. You might want to notice you've been using the blue arrow, which is the selection tool. And every time you finish with a tool, you'd be wise to go back to the blue arrow. The tool we want now is this razor blade, and it is a dangerous tool. So once we're done with it, we're going to go back to the arrow. So here's the razor. I'd like you to look at that bike clip, estimate 1/3 along, and click. Then I want you to take the amount that's left and click smack in the area that's left. Cut that in half. You should have about 1/3 in the middle. If you don't like it, Command Z, shoot it again. I did 1/3, maybe less, maybe 1/4, something like that. Here, I just want to take out some of the middle. I like the end, but the middle feels a little redundant. So actually right now, I got 3 bike clips, and I'm going to go back and get the selection tool. I don't want to accidentally be clicking around with a razor blade. But what's more, I need to select something. Bike, bike, bike. I want the one in the middle. Click it with the selection tool and simply press delete. Is it easy to find the razor? It was in the same place as mine, right? So I got to tell you, I'm a wild man with that tool. I will often get to know a clip, put another clip on top of it, take the one on top and cut out little bits. So in all those parts I delete, I'm seeing the footage on the bottom. It's a way to cut back and forth between clips. And I might like to try that with you, but today we got a special agenda. We need to close this gap. I could either manually drag this part over to the left, or I could simply click the gap and press delete. So they're back to back. Right now, this is what you got, and it's not particularly satisfying. The bike comes in with a fade, goes along his merry way, and then what? Boop. Right? That's a weird cut. It'll look perfectly natural with a cross dissolve. Manually, taking out the middle of something redundant makes sense. You know, if you're trying to say the teacher lectures too much, you take footage of me and remove the middle. All right. All right. Let's get our cross dissolves again. Drag it, take it out, and drop it right over the middle. Now I want to say that dissolve, that little bridge there, has got a lot of freedom in how long it can be. If you'd like to make a longer dissolve, because here's the way it looks now. It's really not bad. But at this point, we are saying that time has passed. So I want a longer dissolve. It's going to feel like more time has passed. This guy's just writing at some length. Look, I know the position of the sun is arguably an issue, but most people are not going to mind it, you know. In fiction, but surely in a documentary, that would be fine. So I'm going to bring the playhead back to my new dissolve right here. And I'm going to take my handle, my zooming handle, and get a better look at it. Dragging it to the left, just so I can get the edge of that bridge to make the dissolve a longer transition. And here's what we've got now. I like it. Really felt like time has passed. Any questions so far? I got two big goals, well, 3 goals in the last 30 minutes, so I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. I want a title, I want music, and I want to export it as a useful finished product. So I think what I want to do next, I want to do the title next. Now, in Adobe Premiere 2020, there's 3 different ways to do a title, and I want to choose one that's rather direct. And if anyone continues using this particular program over the summer, a quick search online could show you other options. Adobe Premiere title. But I want to show you a cool way. Could you get your playhead back to the beginning of your movie? So I'm in the timeline, and I'm just going to tap J a few times, get myself all the way back. There's other ways, but I'm just going to do it this way right now. Back at the beginning. I want to show you something. When it comes to titles, sometimes there's a whole title sequence, possibly a whole animated title sequence. Some shows were really famous just for the title sequence. I mean, Game of Thrones, even if you hated the show, had a fantastic title sequence. Other shows might put the title right over the footage, which is what I want to do. So I'd like you to take that playhead, drag it over to remind yourself what you've got going. Now here's my idea. The movie's going to start where we see that swimmer, and even though he's doing an ordinary swim, his body's sort of coming down toward the bottom of the frame. About here, so he's a little bit away from the ceiling, I wanted to say, athletes now. And then he's going to be swimming, he'll come underneath that text, and then we'll see him emerge from the bottom. So that's my plan. Now, what you need to do is get the playhead to the exact spot where you'd like to see the title. In modern movies, sometimes you wait 30 minutes before the title. I've seen movies where there's 30 minutes of story. I've seen movies where the title sequence is 15 minutes long. And, you know, in the movie, either Do the Right Thing or She's Gotta Have It, I forget which one. There's 15 minutes of, forgot her name, this actress dancing. Anyway, did you place your playhead in a good spot? All right, folks, I'm moving forward. Here we go. Join me by going to the File menu. New. This time, we're not making a new project. We're making a new title. It's called Legacy Title. Can you choose File menu, New, Legacy Title, and click it. It's going to ask you to name the title, right? And if you were going to be doing subtitles, so there were a lot of these, I would name them. I'm only doing one, so I'm not even going to give it a name. This is just so you could find it in your project window. So title 01, that's fine with me. Just click OK. Here's where it gets interesting. This is the first time this program opened up an entirely different window. This window has a bunch of tools on the left, but the one you want is probably already selected. It's blue, and it says Type Tool on it. I'd like for you to click inside the frame. This is the frame you chose just before. Click, and I want you to type the word athletes. Your first decision is capital letters, lowercase letters, a mix. I went with all caps. We're going to want to choose a font, choose a size, and a color. So you had the type tool, you simply clicked and typed. All right, on the right side, you should be seeing something that says Legacy Title Properties. You can move the edge between these little mini windows if you need to. I want you to click over here where font family is. Now these font families give you little previews what they look like. You could choose them from here, or you could click in the current font family, find the arrow key on your keyboard, and just press the down arrow. I want to say a few words. It should feel like sports. You don't really want it to feel like an ancient manuscript, you know, decoration, you know, cartooning, whatever this is, a wedding invitation, right? So you can go with anything that strikes your fancy for today. I'm too picky when it comes to this stuff, and we're running out of time. We have different fonts installed on our computers. All right, I'm going to pick one for memory. All right, if you want to make it smaller, you'll see where it says font size, also in the same area. I want you to press on the current number and drag left or drag right. It's easier than typing in numbers to see if they work. So you literally just press on the current size, keep pressing, and drag left or right. When you're ready, you could click this tool here. It's got its private selection tool, and move it. Now I'm going to write the word now underneath it, but I got this blue selection tool to move it around. I'm going to go back to the type tool. I'm going to write the word now in lowercase letters down here. So I got this in the ballpark. I went back to the type tool. I'm clicking beneath it, and I'm writing now. If I want to move it, I will go back and get the selection tool. I want to say a couple words about color. There's more than one way to choose colors for these. The default is white. I'm going to click on the word athletes. Now to change the color, this area also has color, and it's got its own little scroll bar if you need to scroll through to find it. And here it says color. I could click the white chip and simply pick another color. Hang on a second there. Or I could click the little eyedropper and borrow a color from the actual movie. Now, if I want to change my mind using the eyedropper, I got to click it again each time. I like that idea. I like using the yellow. The only problem is it's hard to see when it crosses the rope. I could change that color, or I could give it a shadow. If I want to give it a shadow on the same properties palette, I just click shadow. That looks great. So I'm going to move it into place, make some final decisions. Maybe I want the word now to do the same thing. Get my eyedropper, choosing the color. If I want that one to have a shadow, I get shadow. Just treating you guys okay? You know what's odd? So much of this is so much easier in the online class than it was in the classroom. All right, odd, interesting. All right, now, if we're ready to use it, here's a really weird thing. There's no OK button. That bugs me every single time. It feels so weird. Where's the OK button? There is none. So what you actually do is go to this little red button here and close it. You feel like you're going to lose it, but you won't. Close it. Where is it? Well, it's in your project window. Could you guys join me by getting back to the project window? This lower corner gets a lot of action. So we'll come into the lower corner. I'm going to click the double arrow if necessary to find your project window. So you got all the other stuff plus the new title. And if you gave it a name, it's showing up with that name. Otherwise, it just says title 01. Now, where do you put it? I want to be very clear about this next step. One, I'm not going to bother opening it in the source window. I don't want an in or an out just now. Two, I'm going to use a new layer. Now that we haven't done yet today, right? So you've been on what's called V1. So in Photoshop, there usually was a background layer, then layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, do. In video programs, they're called tracks, like they were in Audacity. But here you got V tracks. So all the video tracks head up. Underneath it, you got A tracks. All the audio tracks head down. And if you shot your video with audio, A1 would have something on it right now. But these were shot without audio. So this is what I want you to do. You left the playhead in the right place already, right? So don't move the playhead. I want you to get your title right from the project window, drag it, get it back to back with your playhead on V2. Once you got it there, you could see it's starting to fall into place. My timeline is kind of clumsy now. I want to see how long that is. So I'm going to have to zoom out a bit. But here it is in place. I dragged it to V2. I'm looking at my timeline at the very bottom where I've got these two handles. And I'm going to drag to the right to see. Now there's a couple things that interest me that I'd like to point out. Did your title overlap the kickboxer or did it stay on the swimmer? Now, you'll see if it did overlap the kickboxer, you might like it, you might not, right? So what you're going to need to do is rewind and play it. Mine overlapped the transition and it feels really bad. Watch this moment here. Ooh, is that confusing to look at? So one solution is to trim it here. In other words, there's another way to change your out point, right? When you're on the timeline, especially if something's alone on a track, it's really easy to change the out point. All you do is this. You go right to the edge of it and pull it back. That's literally a new out point. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. I'm going to rewind and see if that works better. And if I like it, I'm going to do some music. I'm going to click in my timeline, rewind it. All right, here it goes. There's the title. Nice. Followed by dissolve. Pretty happy with it. Kickboxer sort of uninterrupted. Fades into the cyclist. A little bit of time passing. And then he comes in for the conclusion. He's saying goodbye on everybody's part. Nice ending. How is everybody? Could you save again? And I'd recommend Command S. And a prudent person would save every minute. By the way, I actually happen to be very prudent in this way, but I get so involved with talking to you, I often forget. But save, 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 save. All right, I think we need some sound. I want to say a little bit about sound in a tiny movie like this. So we're using sound that I'm pretty sure I got from Op Sound, which you might remember, Sal was warned that they were having problems when we went to Op Sound. So we could get it from anywhere online. I would do searches free MP3 soundtracks or free MP3 sound effects. I have something for you though. So could everybody join me we're going to import. Oh wait, we already imported it. I remember, I forgot we did it at the beginning. Could you go back to your project window? You notice the one in there called music sample? All right, before we do anything with it, I'm going back to the folder because I want to show you something. Here's music sample. So the first thing I like about it is that the music kind of has a mounting kind of quality, which we're going to see with the swimmer. It's the quietest of the athletes, right? And then it builds up. But at some point, it builds into a really much more exciting bunch of sounds. Now, the weird thing is that stuff's around, 30 something seconds in, and the movie we have is incredibly short. So it's probably going to stop before that really exciting part. If I had time, I might reconsider all of this. I don't know if I'd go to Audacity for it, because there's a few things I can do right here. Right now, I'm going to settle for the beginning and cut off the end and have it fade out to make it work. So what I'd like you to do is this. We have two choices, but I want to tell you what the better choice is. If I double click the wave, which is like an MP3, it's a kind of typical music file. If I double click it, it's going to go open up here, but I don't know exactly what I want to do with it. So I'd rather drag it right to the timeline. So before you do that, can you get your playhead back to the beginning? To get back to the beginning of the timeline, you might want to use the little zoom handle to make sure that you see not only the whole movie, but even more, because the sound's going to come way out. So just get yourself comfortable on the timeline. All right, I think we're ready to bring the sound in. Let's go to the sound file. I'm dragging it by the icon, just like I did with the effects and the title. And I'm going to drag it right on A1 all the way to the left. Now we can see that it's really, really long, right? So I'm going to take a leap of faith. Before I do, I just want to double check. You all got your music on the timeline? So you kind of know where I'm headed with this, right? Really. So I just want to skip to close to that right side to see what we've got. So I'm getting sort of, around the bicyclist. And this is what it's going to sound over there. Now this work's going to work great. That bit where you hear the cymbals, shh, that's going to be a problem if I include it. Because it's getting all exciting again and there's nothing to look at. I'm definitely going to want to cut it before that, in my case. I like this though. It's a very goodbye feeling. Goodbye, fade out. I'm going to have it fade out right after he leaves about here. So I'm going to have it fade out about here. What I'd like for you to do is make a quick, intuitive decision. We're not going to use the razor blade because we don't need to chop this up. We're just going to grab the right edge. Grab the right edge, bring it back to where you think you'd like the music to end. I was talking about something similar the other day. I kind of forget what it was, but right here, some people would bring it right up to the end of the bicyclist. Psst. That's going to be kind of weird. Frankly, I think I want them both to fade out, right? So let's see what we could do about it. If you shorten your music, let's bring it back here. I'd like you to see and hear what you've got. So take a moment, get into the middle of the bicyclist, see if you want to renegotiate that because you could extend the music again or shorten it again. Very flexible program. All right, I'm going to test mine for a minute. That's pretty good. I got a little bit of the cymbals, but I'm going to see if I could work with it. I want to fade out the bicyclist, and I also want to fade out the sound. We have to go back to effects. I'm going to save again in the meantime, Command S. And I'm going to go back to the project window because I have to switch to effects again. All right, again, if you're not seeing the tab, click your double arrow and go right to effects. I want to tell you something about the bicyclist. If I drag a cross dissolve to the far right side of the bicyclist, since there's no other clip to bridge to, it'll just fade out the bicyclist. So that's, a bit of a cheat. I think most people might go to a more traditional dip to black. I'm going to try dip to black. You might want to join me on this. So let me get a little more comfortable because I want to drag dip to black right over here. So again, we're back in effects. In video transitions, dissolve. We're just not using cross dissolve. I want to use the next one, dip to black. I'm going to drop it right, not on the sound. I want to drop it right on the bike. And it's interesting, it's not letting me do it. So I just got to see why. What's it complaining about? Save again. Maybe they don't let you do that anymore. If I want to ask you guys, hey, is yours letting you drag it, or is it giving you I can't do it? It's letting you do it? Some are saying no, some are saying yes.
We're
Marissa,
doing
do
the
you have any hunches?
cross to black.
John, is it working for you?
We're doing the dip to black or the
Yeah.
cross to.
Dip to black.
It goes right to the end.
Mine, look what mine's doing.
Collapse a bit.
Look, I'm dragging well, here, I'm going to drag my dip to black. And it's just saying no. It's giving me that weird little crosshair. Oh, you know.
I'm right at the edge.
You're right at the edge?
I put my cursor right at the edge.
Oh, I bet you're right. Thank you.
It did
Sure.
that for me in the first cross dissolve we did, but all the rest worked fine.
So you don't want to say something about John, what John said, he just dragged it on the edge, which makes sense, right? Because you can't dip to black in the middle, only on the edge makes sense. And the reason that I didn't get that is I usually create keyframes that I could drag up and down for different levels of opacity, and I make a manual dip to black. But this is much more elegant. So I made the choice to do it this way. I think I'm going to do it this way in the future. I just want you to get a look at that before we work on the sound and then export the movie. Nice. If you want your dip to black to be longer, drag it out just like you did with the other transitions. Nice. I'm going to turn off my audio for a minute. There's multiple ways to do the same thing in this program. But I think that's kind of elegant. There's also multiple ways to have the sound fade out. But I'd like to take a look in audio transitions, because that sound, we cut it right in the middle and it's very, very weird, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So back down, you're in effects right now. Let's just fold up the video transitions so you can see what other options there are. And sure enough, there's audio transitions. So I just closed up video transitions to be neat, and I'm opening audio transitions. And there's a crossfade option. Now, crossfade usually means you're fading between two different sounds, two different sound clips. We're going to see what we've got. I'm going to open crossfade. Now, I happen to know from experience, constant power is not what we want in this case, because the volume stays too loud for too long before it fades out. I've had more luck with exponential fade. So I'm going to take exponential fade right out of audio transitions crossfade. I'm going to drag it, and now I know better. I'm going to make sure I get right up to the edge of the audio. So there you could see it. And I'm going to be the guinea pig first, and then decide whether it should take longer. I was all right. I definitely wanted to take longer, so I'm stretching out my crossfade. Do you guys hear the racket in my room? It sounds like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Somebody must be like hunting something down out there. All right, so it goes. Did the fade work on your audio? People still working on it? All right, I'm gonna be quiet for a minute. All right, I think I like mine. Here's where I'm at. I'm pretty happy. That landed exactly the way that I want it. I'd like you to quickly check the beginning of the movie, if you haven't already. I'm going to do mine also, but I'm going to mute mine so you could do your. I want to show you something. I got something in the beginning that's almost perfect. And if I had time on my own, I would tweak it a little bit. The music starts very, very subtly, and then it has an impact moment in the music. And I would love to time it with the first kick of the kickboxer. Look how close it is. And look and listen. That's interesting. You know, I would have to renegotiate this area a little bit to have her kick exactly at that right moment, but it's pretty close and I'm happy with it. I need to talk to you now about how do you wrap it up? So we made ourselves a little mini movie and there's a few steps and one of them is not obvious at all. If anyone has to leave because they got a 12 o'clock class or something, I completely understand it. I will repeat most of this tomorrow and add stuff tomorrow, but I would like you to catch the whole save and export process, which is a little bit bigger than it is in Audacity. All right, save now, plain old save, Command S. Now I gotta say something to you that's very odd. Do any of you have this same little yellow bar on the timeline that I have? Does anyone have a different color? No? So what you'll see sometimes is a green bar, which is the best, or a red bar, which is the worst, and there are other colors. So what do they actually mean? What they are called render bars. And what they're trying to say is, well, look, you use a lot of special effects, all your transitions and all these fades, and your computer can't keep up with that live unless you freeze dry all the decisions. It's like letting the paint dry, and that's called rendering. And if you render, right, then your computer could keep up with those changes. If the computer has a red bar, it's gonna keep stopping, and you're like, I can't even work, you gotta render. Now we have to render for a different reason. Often you can't export unless you render. Now strangely, this morning I exported successfully and I'd forgotten to render. Strange. But usually it won't let me do that. So let's learn how to render. This is actually so easy that no one's gonna remember it because it's too easy. Even if your playhead is all the way through the movie, I want you to just hit return and see what happens, or enter. Hit return or enter. That's not just playing, right? So let it go through the whole thing. Do not interrupt it. So again, don't interrupt it. Let it finish. Now, what you just did was you created the freeze-dried version that the export process can use to make a proper export. Now, it's really easy to forget if you're not seeing a red bar or some mysterious color that reminds you there's trouble. The yellow bar means your computer can handle it. It might have let you export anyway, but I'm not sure. What I want to show you before we export is, here's my folder from earlier today. There's the project file. It just made an autosave file. But if I'm using more special effects and sound effects, it's going to create more folders in there. And those folders are all going to be important to the project. So if I deliver this to anybody, you've got to deliver the whole folder. I want you to hear that one more time. You chose a root folder at the beginning, mostly for this reason. If your computer starts to die, for example, you got to move this whole folder onto a drive or onto a new computer, not just this. Alone, this won't work at all. It needs the movies. If you drag one movie out or delete it, you already broke it. So you need all the parts, including any subfolders that the program might generate. I'm gonna be honest, the autosave folder is the least important. But if it did make any others, it means it needed those supported parts. All right, you rendered. Not very exciting. Let's export. Export in this program is a little weird. All right, fair warning. Can everyone join me at the File menu? Do File menu, oh, sorry, make sure you're back in the program. I had left. I'm back in the program. Then File menu, Export, Export Media. Do you notice it doesn't say Export Movie or anything, just Export Media. There's two things at least that you have to change right away. The first one is this. I want to say a few words about format. Usually when we say format and we're talking about movies, we mean MP4, very nice for movies. .mov, that was the old QuickTime movie. MPEG, or is it MPEG 4? There's other video formats. The one that we want, strangely, requires you choose this, H.264. Got to warn you, this has been a fun class today, but this is an extremely nerdy moment, right? If you click here, some of these you recognize and some you don't. There's MPEGs that I mentioned. Let's see, is there MOV? Or I might say QuickTime, right? So I can make any of these. But why am I pushing H.264? All right, let's be scientists for a second. To make the very popular MP4 video, you have to compress the movie with something called a codec. A codec compresses and decompresses. Codec, right? It's a way of squeezing a movie. H.264 makes the best MP4 movie. So it's not a format, even though it's under that menu, it's a codec. It's a way to compress it into an excellent MP4. So our animation program coming up, I'm going to give you the same advice there. So step one, I recommend choose H.264. Here's step two. It thinks your name is Swim1. That's a bad name. I wish it just said, you know, an empty thing here, but instead it's going to give you the wrong name if you don't remember this. Please click the blue name, which is wrong. Now this looks like a traditional save window, and it kind of is. I'd like you to give it a better name. I'm going to call mine Athletes Today just by clicking on it. It's smart enough not to copy PR project because it's not going to be the project, it's the finished version. And it also knew I wanted an MP4. So let me back up for a second. You chose this, which makes the new step possible. Then you clicked on the current name and you pick the name you want. Down here, it's going to say MP4. It might let you change your mind. Nope. It won't even let you change your mind. Make sure you're in the correct folder and click save. Now here's where it gets very, very weird. I used to forget this all the time, so I'm predicting some of you may do the same. You didn't save it. How weird is that? You told it how to save. The way this program works, there's buttons at the bottom that says Q and export. Q is European for get in line. Get on the queue, right? Get online. It's assuming you're doing this to many movies at once, but we're not going to do that. So we have to click export. So you only had 3 steps really. You clicked up here, chose this. You clicked on the name and chose a new name and a new folder if you'd wanted to. This is both name and folder, right? And then all you do is click export. While it's exporting, I want to tell you, if it's not working, you probably forgot to render, right? We all had to hit return, which made the playhead rewind and look at everything it needed to render. So some computers will not stand exporting otherwise. All right, I let class go rather late, but I'd like you to look in your folder, see if it made it. So I'm finding my folder, and I'm seeing I've got the project file and the MP4. Here's my MP4. The music's working great, the edit's working great. It's a very, very short, but rather complete movie. Fades right into the cyclist. He does his goodbye kiss, which we took advantage of as an ending. Pretty nice. I could see a couple things I could do even better, but I'm pretty pleased with today. How'd your movies come out? So I want to say something. That was one of the serious crash course guerrilla warfare, how you make a movie, right? So as if somebody's going to deliver clips to you, you can make a movie, right? Obviously, the pre-production involved in these things is pretty lengthy. There was a drone involved. There was probably a car with a camera, as well as the car we saw in that shot. All kinds of things got involved. They were professionally shot by Shutterstock. That's why they had said Shutterstock on them. They were designed to get our interest so that we buy footage from Shutterstock. For anyone who wants to do something on their own, you might want to search for free footage or free footage for editing. And I'll have more to say about that tomorrow. You know something, Omar, no, I'm actually looking Faik. Faik, he left. I wanted to show him something that he'd asked about earlier. I think I'll wait till tomorrow so he doesn't miss it. Does anybody have any questions? We are on after, this is what I've nicknamed the after party now. Anyone should feel free to leave at any point in time. I'm not insulted. Does anyone have any questions about what we did today, about video editing in general? No.
Professor.
Yes. Oh, there you are.
Yes, actually I have one question. For example,
right.
as we edited this video, can we have like a bunch of pictures and then we can just add it in up and then we can add a background sound in it?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you?
Like if we have any video and we want to add some pictures in that video and then
Photos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
can
yeah, sure. Yeah, import the photos just like we did with the video and the sound. Remember, one of the first steps was file menu import. And then we got all of our parts. The one thing I would recommend to you, if you do that, is gather the parts first. You know, make a folder, full folder, gather the photos, gather the video, gather the music, right?
Yeah.
I also want to be honest with you that, you know, because it is an intro class, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. You know, like, for example, if a sound file used a weird codec, which I was just talking about, a weird compression scheme, even your MP4, I've had MP3 music sometimes not work. I'm like, hey, it's an MP3. Premiere loves MP3s, but it didn't like that MP3. So with photos, I think Premiere actually would let you bring in PSDs, but it's probably not a good idea. I would recommend you bring in JPEGs.
Oh, okay. Okay. And also, like, if we want to start our video by some text in the beginning, as you wrote, like athletes now,
right?
And we just wanted to start the video by just with that text, athletes now, and then we can start the video, which is actual video.
Well, you could definitely. You got to say you have good questions. I want to show you two things fast. I want to answer that one and a quick peek at an earlier question. So I want to show you something. I'm coming back into here. I'm gonna recommend you don't join me on this, guys. But I want to say something. What Faik was just recommending. I'm going to take my title out for a minute. Let me just make sure it's saved. I would probably select the entire timeline to do what he was talking about. This is the move tool, and then I'd move it over. Now I've got this. This is going to look like black. I would follow the same steps to make the title. You could use that to make any text, really, but I've got the title from before. And I'm going to drag it over so you could see what would happen now, right? So I could literally move, let me just, sorry.
Yeah, Professor, I'm saying for this, like.
Yeah, you'll see, I just want everyone to see it looking a little bit better. So it looks something like that. You know, if I have room for it, I could drag it down, but this is what's going to happen.
And also, like, if this athletes now just start like this, and then it will go on the video and just blur it up.
You could, So again, you'd have to explore all the effects. I do want to
Oh,
mention
okay.
one effect for you right now, though, right? You didn't like, you were talking about sizing things. So here's the kickboxer. I'm going to actually bring the player to remind everybody, but I'm also going to double click it. So it actually opened that little piece up here, because here I also have effect controls. These can be cool. So I could have applied effects at first, but if I do it now, it's only going to work where in the part that I selected, in between the in and the out, right? But here's effect controls. So there's a few of these are obvious, a few are not. I was hoping blur would be here, but it isn't. What is here though is scale. So you see how she's a little small? I got the black stripe on top and bottom. I'm going to go to scale, and I'm going to open it up there and see what the problem is, because it's grayed out. Oh no, not scale width, just scale. I just scaled her up. She's at almost 109%, so she's starting to get blurry. If I get any bigger, I'm going to lose it. But this is sort of to answer an earlier question you had, Faik. You can change size. And the way you would do it if you really needed to was you double click the clip. You can go to effect controls. In this case, I wanted to work on the kickboxer. I double click that, effect controls. It's called scale. And I just opened up scale and I sized it. Right now it's 8% bigger than it was originally. So again, this class isn't really about going into too much advanced detail, but this is cool. I want to say something to anyone who likes animating or likes the idea of doing special effects. If this class was, say, all about video, I might take some time. Hang on a second here. I just want to see what, give me a minute. I might take some time to talk about keyframes. We're going to do keyframing when we do animation, though. What I could do is have something change scale live. Say at this point, be original size, 100%. But this far down the timeline, keyframe, key moment, be 10% larger. So you'd actually watch the video as it gets bigger. One thing that made me think about that, your idea of blurring, that might work well if I could keyframe the blur. So the swimmer's a little blurry while the title's there, but then animates back into sharp. So again, that's advanced stuff. It requires keyframing. Premiere's pretty good at it. I haven't done much of that lately, to be honest with you, but I used to do a lot of it. Those are good questions. Anybody have any other questions for me? Really? It was a lot for one day. I hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah, Lorenzo, you want to turn on your mic?
Yes, I have something that I discovered on my Premiere Pro program.
Okay.
Worked everything fine, but then when I clicked export, it started, the blue bar started going, then it stopped, then it didn't go any further. I waited for a bit, for a while, and then the movie, it exported it correctly, but the status bar wouldn't go forward. It would just stuck there.
How odd.
Then Adobe crashed, but it exported the movie anyway.
That was lucky. I mean, weird kind of luck, but lucky. I just want to say something to address that. Video is the most computer intensive thing we're going to cover this particular semester. So honestly, any of you going into video, and I know some of you are, you got to save up your money and get the best, strongest machine you could possibly handle, or you can have Jonathan build you one. See, I'm getting work for you, man.
I appreciate it. I just finished building mine for under 400.
Did you? So talk to John. They're only going to charge you an extra $1,000 for it. But but I gotta say, if you're doing it in a Mac, like, I got a MacBook Pro, which can handle it. I always try to get them with the most RAM when I'm buying a computer. I'm like, what's the most RAM this thing can handle? Because the RAM is, when 3 people talk at you and you're like, you can't hear them all? It's because you don't have enough RAM. Your memories are in your hard drive, but RAM is when you bring things forward to work on them. You're like, hey, RAM, video needs a damn lot of RAM. You want to ramp it up. It also needs a big hard drive to the degree that most video people will never use the hard drive on the computer the way we did today, because the files are huge. You did that with a feature-length movie, you might use up your entire hard drive. So they almost always get the most stable portable drive, plug it in, and they only save video projects to that drive. They have a designated video drive, something I did for years, because the files are many gigabytes, many gigabytes. And my longest movie was 36 minutes. So I can't even imagine, you know, how big a 4-hour movie is going to be. So all of that's going to slow you down. So one thing I want to say to you, Lorenzo, to everybody is, typically you want to shut everything else down. You know, so like in class, we can't shut Zoom. Probably don't want to shut the browser. I definitely didn't need Sublime. So I should have quit Sublime. If I quit everything, also, if your computer's acting really weird, save your project file, shut down. Just shut down. I cannot tell you how many things get fixed by shutting down. You know, it just cleans up. You know, there are times you can't think straight, you just must go to sleep. You wake up and you're like, that wasn't so bad. I was freaking last night. By the way, that's me every night. I'm glad you're taking my morning class. Night class would be like, everything sucks. Why are we doing this? I'm just kidding. But yeah, shut everything down that you can when doing video, especially if your computer's behaving that way. Save a lot so that if you do crash, at least you could open up the project file and just continue happily. I taught Premiere many years ago. I'm talking like 20 years ago. And it was so lame in those years. It would literally crash with the best machine every 5 minutes. The best video editors were just the ones who could stand it. It was literally just, you know, the rendering thing that I told you about before you export? You used to have to render after every change. Every single change. And you would just literally lose the thread of what you're doing. But the program got better and better as all the video programs got better and better. Avid is huge. Final Cut was huge. And there are others that right now I'm all about this one, you know, because it is in Creative Cloud. All right, I'll field any last questions anyone might have.
I got a suggestion.
Yeah, John.
If because of the way Premiere Pro works, you can always save exporting for after class. As soon as class is done, just close Zoom because Zoom is eating up a lot.
Really? Were your exports really slow? So it depends. Like you saw, mine went quickly, and I'm a little amazed by that. But you know, recently I threw out a lot of files, videos, by the way, you know, or move them off because they're always the troublemakers. You know, my computer just was, the hard drive, it also used some of the hard drive like Photoshop does. And it was just hanging on everything. But yeah, that's true. That's very true. I'm going to do it again tomorrow and probably a third time, you know, as the teacher, but people can definitely make that decision. Because exporting is a little weird. I mean, who's going to click that little blue name? And so many people are going to leave after that thinking that they clicked choose and it felt like saving. So even though it's simple steps, and by the way, it is all listed on the handout. Just about everything today is listed on the handout. I want to take one peek at the handout before we all say goodbye for the day. So I might have, let's see, didn't just quit. Give me a second there. There we go. Please let me repeat that there's no class Monday. There is class tomorrow. We're doing more video. I expect to do even more video next Tuesday, but we're going to be moving out of this subject in maybe 3 classes. So there's not going to be a lot of it, but it's going to be, you know, deep, rich stuff, I hope. I want to just get to the video part though. So here it says getting started. And I really got very, very specific about how to get started, even about making the new folder. Oh, it's funny. I didn't think I mentioned workspace, but I did. So I even talked about checking your workspace. But then it goes over what each panel does, the 4 panels that we used a lot today, you know, and some of the steps. It even suggests some other steps people can try under effects. Here it's talking about rendering. And there's all the steps we just took for exporting. This is a pretty cool handout in that way, really. Like, there's some people told me they were able to just do the class just with the handout and the assets. I find that a little surprising, but it's encouraging. Surely, since you did it once, this, you know, some of my handouts are designed to be cheat sheets at length. You know, the kind you print, fold, to keep in your back pocket when you're at an interview. That type of whip it out cheat sheet. This is a good one. All right, folks. Andy, did you have a question? I sensed a question. I don't know if I'm right.
No, I'll figure it out.
All right. Don't be shy about it. You know,
By the way, I'm gonna need time on. I'm not gonna be able to deliver today. I don't know what I did, but all my images stopped showing up. I broke all my links somehow.
On the midterm you're talking about?
Yes.
So listen, let me just give you a couple quick ideas about probably what caused that, just word of mouth. First off, your root folder must have an images folder in it, right? The way I told you to write the code for your images, they're all gonna say images / mypicture.jpg. So unless you wrote the code differently, if your code actually says images / every time it gets a picture, there's gotta be an images folder in the root folder. If any of those photos are in the wrong folder, they're gonna show up missing. That's the most common error. The photos are in the wrong folder. The second most common error is you put it in the correct folder, but you wrote the code wrong. The code doesn't mention images /, it just source equals quotes with the JPEG in it. Should be source equals images /. So if you have the folder and the simple code, your images shouldn't disappear. I'll bet you that error is one of those things.
Now, also, I was on one of these tutorials online, and it brought up something about an app called Bootstrap.
Yeah, I used to love Bootstrap. I want to highly recommend that you avoid Bootstrap just for a little while.
Complicated.
Well, it's complicated because you're new to it. And the other thing that I want to know is, are people still using it? Let me tell you what Bootstrap is. There's a bunch of things for web designers called platforms. It's a goofy name, really, platform. But it usually means Bootstrap, or Skeleton is another one. And what they are actually, to be very concrete, they're style sheets, mostly. And you use it together with your own style sheet. But their style sheet allows you to make columns, kind of like Zoom looks, and very elaborate designs without you having to learn as much code to make those things. Column-based design, like a newspaper or like a lot of big websites.
Well, the way I came upon it, I wanted to add a banner in the masthead area.
Right.
And it looks really, really good.
Right.
But I'm also confused by the text around it. I don't get it. I don't get it.
So Andy, I just got to say, like, to be honest with you, I love helping people with stuff, but I always have to figure out like a reasonable parameter, you know, and so Bootstrap is out of our parameter in numerous ways. One, it was the flavor a couple of years ago because it was so hard to design in columns. But CSS has grown up, and now there's something called CSS Grid. But like you mentioned, Bootstrap does other cool things. It makes carousels for photos and slideshows.
Yeah, there's a carousel too that's implemented in there. I remember that
Built
word.
in, yeah. So it's really cool, but really, literally, for me to teach you how to use Bootstrap would probably take 3, 4, 5 classes.
Okay.
So here's what I'd like to say. If you can get it to work, I won't be surprised. I'm cool with it. If you can't, you just might want to remove that feature and scale back. But one thing I do want to say, Andy, you're here all the time. You participate all the time. You've more than earned flexibility. If you wind up needing an extra day or even 2, you have it.
Thank you.
All right. So there's that. And lastly, look, if your images don't come back to life, you got to let me know. We got to arrange time where I could, you know, kick in a little bit more. But the images probably have nothing to do with Bootstrap. It's probably a folder structure thing or a basic image code problem.
Okay.
Ron, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask for like you're trying to add like an image to the back of your headings, kind of like that.
I was actually using it to do like a spray paint on I was able to do this smoothing out thing. I forget what what was it called on Photoshop, and I was able to add it on all the headlines, and it showed up really nice. But somehow it's all gone, and I don't know how to. It went with all the photos, so I don't
So
know.
it has nothing to do with Bootstrap, that particular problem.
So something got mixed up somewhere along the lines.
So Andy, it sounds like what you're saying is not a Bootstrap problem, right?
I don't know.
You don't know. And the other thing that I think John might have been hinting at, were you using the images as backgrounds? Because we
Yeah.
didn't cover that in class, but I could see how you might have learned it on W3 Schools or somewhere.
Yeah, that's the suggested sites that, you know, and I also got some tips off of YouTube.
Excellent.
And it was looking really, really nice. It was looking real nice. But somewhere I did something, and like all the, you know, all the links are still together, but all the background and photos are gone.
So Andy, would you like to screen share?
Well, unfortunately, I froze up, so I had to move to a device. I'm on my cell phone at this stage because I froze up in the middle of the class. When I exported, it never turned back on.
Wow, really? That really messed people up. So
It's
Andy,
okay.
listen, here's where I want to leave this. Do your best to fix it. Don't flip out. I don't mind helping, right? If you can't resolve it on your own,
this
what's happening?
Oh, that's a first.
I don't know what I did. This is why I can't show myself. You see this mess?
What's the mess? I mean, wearing a shirt would help, but I don't see a mess other than that.
I'm a bald man. There's no reason to have all this hair surrounding my face.
Oh, you like going? I know, me too. I got one in the back, but
I don't know what I just did, but
I'm dying for a haircut. I really feel like something from that '70s show.
I'm gonna take a deep breath and go this weekend.
It's driving me nuts. I know. I actually have gas masks from 9/11 in the house. We bought gas masks for the family, but that would look pretty weird at the barber shop. I think I'd scare everyone else out of the store.
Yeah, I'm a little scary right now.
I know. I need a haircut so bad. Really, I'm addicted to one barber.
Me too.
I'm slow to let anybody touch my head other than this guy. But
Me
in any
too.
case, you tackle that image problem. Don't flip about it. Just try to fix it. Hang on one second. Is anyone looking for me out there? No? Okay. And then keep me posted, all right? We'll arrange to have a look at it if you still need that.
Thank you.
Okay. So folks, I'm gonna say goodbye at this stage. Remember, I always check my email if anyone has issues. People have not been using it a lot, other than like I'm gonna be late or I wish I could make it, and you know, stuff like that. But you could even ask more elaborate questions of me, and I'm fine with it. If it's within the range of what I've taught, I most certainly would be glad to help. So in the meantime, I guess that's it. I'm gonna head out. Emmanuel, Faik, Salah, Aliana, Andy, John. I almost said goodbye to myself. Lorenzo.
Bye.
Lorenzo, do you have one more question for me, Lorenzo?
I was just saying goodbye.
Just say goodbye. Cool. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Professor.
See you all. All right, bye-bye.